coming and being here in this room today. We're going to have a very, very important discussion where we're going to be discussing how to be a better you. And sat beside me are two very, very incredible people. To my right, I've got Hussein Manoa. He's a poet. He's also the Guinness World Record holder for putting on the biggest mental health festival, literally the world's biggest mental health festival. And he did that here in Hackney Empire. And to my left, I've got Claire. And Claire, please explain what you do. It's really exciting when you say
I've worked in the record business for years, but I kind of changed career slightly and became a behavioural psychologist. And
it's
now
like literally flipped round.
I flipped round, and now I kind of deal with not letting artists kind of fall to bed and perform well. That's me.
Why did you choose to do that?
Because when I was working in record companies, I was constantly wanting to sit on the other side of the desk and protect the artists and the writers, because it went from kind of, when it became a corporate business, when you had big companies like Sony who make PlayStation and they make television sets, and they bought these labels, and the actual recording artists became slightly less important and seemed a bit more like commodities, and people kept forgetting they were human beings. And then you saw this sort of growth in marketing, where when I started in the music business back in the late 80s, you had artists coming with kind of piercings and ridiculous haircuts, and they chose to do that. That was their choice. They kind of invented style. And then I started noticing marketing departments going, do you know, it'd be really interesting if you did this to your hair, or you showed more of your body, or you did, you know, you came across as aggressive, or whatever they wanted. And actually it started bumping with who they were as a person. And I saw it more, and it was harming the artists because they weren't who they really were. They were becoming something, being sold to the public that they didn't believe in either. So I decided to leave, and I went and learned behavioural psychology, which is a lot to do with body language, but it's also a lot to do with thought patterns, language patterns, and how we talk to ourselves, because we all self-talk, you know, we talk in our heads. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people aren't aware. They go, what, do other people do that as well? We all do that, and it's like a coach in our mind. And when I started out, I was one of those people that go, shut up, Claire, you're being an idiot, don't do that, which isn't really encouraging. And you know, if you're your own worst enemy, you're not going to be the best that you can be. So I learnt that, and I learnt all other holistic healing things like emotional freedom technique and crystal healing and various different things, and then started applying it and working with artists. So I really enjoy what I do now, and I think it makes a difference.
That's really exciting. Mm-hmm. You're saying, why did you choose poetry?
I started writing poetry because I grew up listening to like Dizzy Rascal. I remember that So Solid Crew 21 Seconds video. Do you remember when they were behind like the cages? And I felt like that was an iconic time to be growing up. And then I was reading a lot of poetry in school. Michael Rosen, Caroline Duffy, Rudyard Kipling, and none of the poets sounded like me. None of them sounded like they had a Pakistani mum or they come from a house like mine, and that really upset me because it made me think, well, I'm out here reading about people that have stories when I've got stories. People from my culture have stories. And yeah, I think I was like fascinated by wordplay, ad-libs, even like now with like Pepsin Conan and the kaboom and just like everything. I just love words. So I just wanted to make that my life.
Why is mental health important to you?
Mental health is very important to me because, so like Shiva said, I set up this festival that we did in Hackney Empire, which was all about teaching young people about themselves. Because in school you learn a lot, but we don't learn about ourselves. You don't learn how to handle like a panic attack or anxiety, or how to handle depression, or what to do when you're feeling low, or when you're being body shamed or cyberbullied. And I feel like there's so many complex issues that exist in today's world. Our parents don't necessarily always understand them, and that's because we don't understand them. Like, I can't keep up to date with the pace of the rate the world develops, and because of that, so many people are being affected, including people like in my life. Like 3 of my friends have sadly taken their own lives. One was like a month ago, and it's like, wow, people actually out here can't actually talk about how we're feeling at a time where we're so connected, we are disconnected. So for me, I wanted to like make that conversation happen in the most disruptive but like educational and entertainment and engaging way. So yeah, mental health is really important to me. It affects a lot of people where I live and in my life, including me.
How do you feel, and this question is for both of you, I guess I'll start with you. How do you feel that society influences the way that we speak to ourselves using that inner voice that you were referring to earlier?
Well, I think society seems to have changed over, certainly as I've grown older, the world you live in now is very different to the analogue world that I grew up in. And because it's become incredibly dictated to, all the social media now is being watched with algorithms to sell you things. And they're creating our culture for us. What is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, behaviours. And actually, I've noticed more and more, you have newspapers like the Daily Mail, for example, they'll write something about someone like Victoria Beckham. Beautiful Victoria Beckham is a wonderful clothes designer. Well, they know that most people only respond with negative comments. And that actually gets lots of likes and interest, and that drives revenue for advertising. So they're not saying she looks beautiful and she's a great clothes designer because they want to say that about her, whether it's true or not. They want people to say, no, she's very ugly, and no, she doesn't even design her own clothes, and she's a terrible person. Because people who want to pay compliments tend to not put them on social media. It's like a free-for-all, frenzy of negative behaviours. And we need to be very mindful of that. I think we went through a period of, oh wow, we've got social media, I can talk to my friends. I remember my kids on MSN, chatting to their mates after school, and I'm going, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? What's going on? I don't understand this. And it was very innocent. And as time's gone by, and we're driving economies, and we're all seeing in our high streets shops closing down. We're not going to places and interacting with people. You go to Sainsbury's and they try and drive you to a machine instead of a human being. I always say, no, I'll wait for the person because I want to say good morning and what's going on. So we're all kind of being driven by sort of this corporate behaviour to manipulate us and manipulate our culture. I'm seeing, and I'm very concerned particularly at the moment, of a number of American rappers, and they tend to come from Hispanic backgrounds, who they've covered their faces in tattoos, and they're taking Xanax, and they're dropping loads of drugs.
What is that all about?
Well, it gets attention, and being very cynical kind of person, when you have an artist who, in the record business, if you record an album, to get the most attention, and this does get a lot of attention, little Peep, committed suicide. It was an overdose, but to me he was committing suicide over a day on his social media taking tablets. And he died at the end. You take loads of pills and you mix them all up and you're drinking as well. What's going to happen? And this is influencing young people. And this, so he dies, and then a month later a record's released. And it's a big hit because everyone's going, isn't this so sad, this poor little lamb? And the manager had said, oh, I knew this day was coming. Well, it was all documented online. It's ridiculous. So we really, your generation now, for me, it's, the culture that you have around you, the society you have, is being driven very much, I think, by corporates. And actually, these kind of events, where we're all humans and we're looking at each other, and yes, we all have different backgrounds, but we're all human beings, and we really have to join together now and start to create our own cultures of acceptance and listening and understanding, and just use social media again to keep in contact and to try and post positive things. I think it's this negativity that is creating girls to feel very, in particular girls, they've targeted girls deliberately because the cosmetics businesses make billions of pounds by making us all feel very insecure. And we're all born beautiful, it's beautiful in different periods of time. If you go back to sort of the 1920s or the 30s, it's always changing. We are all beautiful. We all have to accept the way we are. And if you keep being told, oh, your eyebrows need to be taken off and you need to have them painted on every month, you're just part of So I think it now, you know, today's talk about who am I and how can I protect that, how can I find out what that is so critical. This is a very critical time.
You made so many important points there. One thing that stood out to me the most was how corporations are interrupting creativity and manipulating it and harnessing it for harmful use. Hussein, how do you feel that, you know, as a poet, as someone who creates music to move people, how do you feel that you can separate yourself and separate your creativity from a world that is driven by corporate decisions?
That's a really good question. I think a lot of the time, this conversation is tricky, yeah, because if I sit here and say, oh yeah, I hate Love Island because it produces toxic content, I might look like a hater. Do you know what I'm saying? And I ain't a hater because I feel like whatever I do, as long as I do it with heart, my job is done. Whether it reaches 10 people or 10,000 people or 10 million people, my job's done. So I think a lot of things that are put into today's world, to like what you said, make us feel insecure. And you said a great thing once, I remember, that it is cheaper to love yourself. And I think you just have to remember that if you want to be a creative person and you want a career in a business where people are trying to monetize off of your insecurity, you have to be able to detach yourself from all of this, focus on you, come in, get what you want, and leave. Don't faff about with distractions and desire and temptation. And oh yeah, like there was a time when someone kept telling me, yo, get that laser treatment on your arms, get rid of your body hair because like no one's hairy, like get rid of. And I was like, okay, I was like, let me look into this. £1,500 for me to remove my hair. When I'm thinking, yo, like my hairline's going, yeah, and on top of that, someone's going to me, yeah, £5,000, I give you it back. So I'm just like, the fact that people are like making money off of the way I'm feeling is a problem. So what do I need to do? I detach myself from it. And I think like social envy is a very, very real thing. Like we're glued to our phones, and like this week especially, like I've deleted Instagram and Twitter off my phone.
Why did you choose to do that?
I did it because like I just needed the space, and I will only like, it's so weird, it's a bit time consuming, but I only re-download them when I have to post something.
Of course.
And I'm going to find a way in which I can like hide the apps deeper into my phone, like swipe all the way to the end.
I've tried doing that, doesn't work.
But like I feel like I go online and I'm influenced by so much toxicness. For example, that Kardashian lady, what's her name, the young one?
Is it Kylie?
Yeah, Kylie. Like people trying to fundraise money for her to become a billionaire is like it's very, very problematic, because we are living in a world where like there's a huge refugee crisis, there's people dying, there's still slavery existing in certain parts of the world, there's like educational camps of prisons making people like change religions, and we're focused on making this girl become a billionaire because she is like part of a cosmetic industry that is profitizing off of people's insecurities. So going back to your question, I just think we need to learn to detach ourselves, get what you want and leave. That's the only way you'll keep sane in this like creative business, I think.
Have you ever come across people who have, you know, been in the music business as musicians or as creators and have managed to maintain a level of their identity? Do you get what I mean? Like they've managed to come in and they've been told, be this, be that.
Not really, no. Not really. I mean, back in the sort of 80s, you know, it was pretty, people were manipulated, you know, and I can't reveal who it is, but there was an artist that we had she was the same age as me, and she had a #1 record, and we were both 21 at the time, and she got pregnant, and she was marched into an office with all the men, and then she was marched to an abortion clinic, and she's very publicly had terrible meltdowns, mental health issues subsequently, you know, and was obviously still the same age. And so that was my first instance. And then I'd worked with this act who didn't sing, they were miming. And
as in what, live performances they were?
Live performances, the recording. In fact, it was an English speaking song, but they were both German. and they couldn't speak a word of English. And I went, hang on, how are they singing in English? Shut up, it's someone else has done it, it's fine, they're fronting it. Now, they won an award, they won a Grammy actually for the best single of that year. And one of the guys couldn't cope, he couldn't cope with the lie, and they had to admit, they said we didn't write it, and we didn't even sing it. And there was so much bad stuff in the press, you know, you're liars, it wasn't their fault. These were two young guys who wanted to be famous, and they were being manipulated by people. And one of them committed suicide because of it. And so I've watched this for a long, this is partly why I've, you know, over the years, you watch things like that and you think, ooh, what is this business about? What is this all about, really? And it's only, you know, as far as I know, I think I'm the only person that's doing the job that I do. And I kind of tend to do it by artist to artist recommendation.
As in, if someone say this person needs help.
It's kind of like a little secret club. It's like, you know, and it wasn't meant to be like that. But I've had great resistance from record companies for the work that I do, because what I want to do is put something in place so we can prepare people for this fame world. We can look at, you know, whether there's mental health issues within the family, whether the artist has, you know, a lot of very talented people tend to be Asperger's, autistic, a lot of people with bipolar, and it's absolutely fine. You know, having those conditions are actually, you know, wonderful sometimes. If they're looked after, it's that they've been given gifts where they've had things taken away from them. They are gifts as long as they're looked after, but they're not. And since I've been doing this work, I mean, you know, like I say, I've been trying to get record companies to take this on, and then we kind of want to work on skills and practice and learning constantly. When someone is signed to a record company, they should be learning all sorts of skills. Girls tend to be told to look pretty and dance, and you know, I don't know whether boys are more protected or not, but you know, as a female, and many of my clients are female, the ones that have had the problems, it tends to be this exploitation of the way that we look and how young we are and how pretty we are, and actually how vulnerable girls are. And that's when you hear these terrible, you know, the Me Too campaign, that was huge, you know, that's women being exploited, and I believe you just had a women's self-empowerment
We did.
talk. More of this is very important, because we have to value our skills and our capabilities and how clever we are, and not keep being told how pretty we are and how young we are, because that's the other thing that we have, is this fear of getting older. This, oh, you're going to be over and done with, but you know, oh, and you've got to fit in having kids, and you've got to be married, and then by the time you get to 45, it's all over because you're not fertile anymore, and that's the end of your life. Well, that's not true. You know, and for me, at my age, I'm 51 now, I've never felt more empowered than ever, and I think possibly, you know, the kind of, you just talked about Trump and gentlemen like him. I had to live in the world where it was full of men like that. You know, the 1980s, the early 90s, those kind of guys all behave like that. And I can see this change. I can really start to see that, and it is going to come from this joint effort of all of us, and we cannot be divided by colour, gender, race, none of it. We all have to join together now. So I'm sorry I've gone off on one.
No, don't be sorry. It's really, really insightful. I'm literally just listening like, you're so right.
You know, I think learning, we have to really build up as much learning and reading and talking to each other and valuing each other, because you won't have that. You know, if you've got an artist who goes, no, you, I'm going to do it this way, and you do get some. But you know, I've watched someone like Halsey, who was, you know, and I know, I think it's public that she suffers with bipolar.
Yeah.
And I actually, before she was signed, I was talking to the people that were thinking of signing her at the label. What do we need to put in place? What do we, you know, she has bipolar, we want to protect her. And that was great, that was really encouraging. But I see her now with the success and boyfriends and influences changing. And I am very concerned for someone like that. So I don't know. I had great hope in her. and I don't think she's had, I think you have to practice connecting back to, no, this is me, this is who I am, all the time. Whether you're on a stage or you work in Marks and Spencer's or Google, you have to keep coming back to, hang on, does this fit with my belief system? Because you've been kind of working on those from birth. And you have to keep honing in on them. What are my values? Is that interfering and bumping with my belief system?
Yeah, you've made so many incredible, insightful points, and something that's really stood out to me is people, being themselves and having to compromise on that in order to survive and make a career. And Hussein, I want to ask you, because obviously me and you've had so many conversations where you felt like your talent and your insight and the value that you bring is either being overlooked or being misunderstood, but yet you still choose yourself and you still continue to stand firm in what you have to offer. Why is it that you continue to choose yourself in this industry?
I think. Wait, is this being recorded?
Yeah.
Okay.
Live stream.
Just gotta protect yourself. I think for me, like, I'm a poet. I'm 27. I perform across the world. I've supported some great people. My life is weird and wonderful, and it's got ups and downs in it, like everyone else does. I've been working at this for a very long time. I've had people say to me, change your name.
Change your name?
Change your name.
What? Did they have any suggestions?
No, I'm not going to get into
Okay,
the suggestions. So the first one was change your name. Second one was get rid of your beard. Like, I've had, get rid of your beard.
And why? What's the reason behind that?
Because I think people, when they hear a name like Hussein and see a guy with a beard, like, you all automatically assume terrorist. Or you'll all automatically assume, like, something negative with regards to the Muslim race because of what the world has, like, now become. So I think people around me maybe naively wanted to, like, protect me or maybe, I don't know, like, change me by saying, yeah, do these things. And I never listened because, like I said earlier, the reason I started writing because there was not many voices like mine. And still today, if I was to say to all of you, like, name 10 influential Asian people in mainstream culture, you have Amir Khan, Naughty Boy, Zayn Malik. Who else is there?
That's so true.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, legitimately speaking, who else is there? I can't think of no one, and I struggle to think. Who?
Mindy Kaling?
Who?
Did you say Mindy?
Mindy from the Mindy Project. She's Asian. She's American.
What's Mindy?
Is it Mindy Kaling?
Yeah.
Actress.
Do you say she's American? Sorry, I don't know who she is. But I'm not even being shady. But, like, if you was to say to me, like, name any other race or culture, I could list a few. And so for me, it's problematic that there's not people that look like me on mainstream platforms because of that. There's like a huge population of, like, Asian people in the United Kingdom, and they don't have a figurehead. They don't have somebody to look at for aspiration. They don't have, like, a go-to point of call to think, oh, you know what, like, Little Mix is an empowering girl band. Like, I look like them, or I could be in One Direction, or I could be a grime rapper, or I could, whatever it is. So, and I think because of that, my community and my culture gets lost. It gets forgotten about, and it gets further marginalized and ostracized. So I think I can never change who I am, because if I did that, I would be letting down millions of people that look like me, and the generations of, like, people that are like me that are yet to come. And I look at my nephew, and my nephew's like 2, and he's very hairy. And when I look at him, I think, I know the bullying you're going to go through in school, but I never want your mum to shave your hair off your arms, because that's not what you should do.
That's not the solution.
Exactly. Like, there's a lot of embedded, like, cultural problems on my end that have never been addressed, but on top of that, there's a problem on the other side that's
society.
Yeah. So I don't think I could ever, like, change who I am, because ain't nobody got time for that. Spare effort as well. It's a lot of effort, and it's like, I can only ever do me. And I think that's why my work is getting out there, because there's people that are thinking, yeah, we've been waiting for somebody to speak about the stuff he's talking about. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Thank you, Hussein. Do you reckon there's still hope for musicians to survive in the music industry and come out on the other end still
from a health point of
unscathed?
view?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I mean, economically, it's really changed with the way payments. You know, people don't buy music; they stream it, and they use Spotify, and it's had a huge effect on how songwriters and producers have been paid. Songwriters and producers weren't even acknowledged for a very long time. It's only recently you can see who produced and wrote a song, which is great now. But they're earning less, so economically that puts strain on. You know, and we all know if your families are struggling to pay bills, the amount of stress and anxiety it creates within. You know, oh God, there's the gas bills come in. We all freak out when the gas bill comes in because it's horrific. If you're not being paid properly and yet you're acting to the world that you know you're a superstar, and actually you probably owe a lot of money. You know, the way the business is structured. When you see pop stars in their big flashy cars, it's either been given to them by a big brand to drive around and to advertise the car, or you get a lot of management companies that buy all this stuff with their money that they actually rent back. It's kind of, they don't really own anything, and I don't know, I think as a songwriter, if you can be a songwriter, potentially you've got a good career as a producer, but until we start valuing growth over years and start to really, I look at singers, I work with a lot of singers and I work with a vocal coach. Because record companies go, oh yeah, well, you know, she's getting on a bit, she's 25, which, you know, 25. Your voice, us girls, our voices mature over time and they get deeper and they get stronger, and you have a lot of female singers because we have an auto-tune and vocal editing and all sorts of programs to make someone sound great. You can't hear how not great they really are. There are some terrible singers, but also when you're very young, your voice isn't developed and you haven't matured enough. And it's probably about 26, 27 when a female's vocal, and boys as well actually, start to really develop and have that strength. And that's the point where most record companies will go, well, we kind of had a hit, but we're not really sure what to do with the second. Oh, she's nearly 27, get rid of them. And it's really hard to get back to a normal life again when you've been dropped by a record company. And for me, it's, you know, if we don't start, we have to empower ourselves. We can't wait around for record companies or anyone. We can't wait and say, well, somebody else is responsible for this, because people don't really seem to care about anyone but themselves and these big corporations and business. So we really have to empower ourselves, and we have to be, we need to find peers that also support each other and nurture and help each other.
Yeah.
You know, and now it's upsetting to hear, you know, you saying, you being told to change your name, and, you know, for me it's like, we absolutely need people called Mohammed and Hussein doing great things, you know. It needs a complete rebrand, and people like you are going, no, I am who I am, and it's changing people's perceptions. But, you know, as a white British woman, I feel embarrassed and ashamed of the past of the British and you know, what's seen as white privilege. I mean, I know I've had advantages, but I was a white woman from the 80s, and like I say, I lived in a world of lots of men that were like Trump, who were grabbing your bum and bits and bobs and treating you very badly. And then I think we all have to feel, you know, we can't feel responsible for other people's behaviours just because we say, you know, if blonde women went round harming people, I'm not going to suddenly go, I'm going to take responsibility for all of this. Because why would I? Why should any of us? You know, if you're a good person, you're living your true self, and you spread that and you share that, and it doesn't, you know, I'm not religious, but I respect religions. You know, they're very helpful to many people. It's any ways of, you know, how we can communicate to ourselves and then out to each other and grow and spread, and it spreads. You know, I saw what you did. I came to the amazing mental health day that Hussein put on, and there were so many people there. It was outrageous, you know, and this was at a time when talking about mental health publicly was still a bit, oh God, you can't talk about these things. And we have to, you know, and we are, and we've had Me Too, And you young girls, you know, it's not just a bunch of old women going, oh, I didn't touch my bum. This is like really serious abuse. That's just one of the things that went on, but there's so much more that was going on behind that to get those jobs. And now if we really start to believe in ourselves, girls are quite often divided. We get divided at very young ages. We're not really encouraged to do team sports. We're, you know, I've watched girls, and I see girls in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s, we kind of give up in our 50s because we don't care anymore. Where I call it head girl syndrome, where we go for ourselves. We actually have to go as a team together. You know, we can't do this individually. We empower ourselves personally, and then we share it and we push forward. And that's what, you know, and that's not just the girls, it's boys as well. We have to make some change now. And I can really, you know, days like these really leave me feeling very positive.
Wow. I feel I've got to be really honest here. I mean, as someone who, maybe some of you don't know me.
Everybody knows you.
Okay, well, for the few of you in here who might have just come across me for the first time, I'm popularly known on the internet as the Slumflower, right? And so on Instagram, I've got about 132,000 people following me. On Twitter, I've got about 57,000 people following me. And why I'm giving you this information is because that is a lot of numbers. And those aren't just numbers, those are people. And those aren't just people, those are literal human beings who have got perspectives and who can place judgments. So imagine 132,000 people having an opinion of you. But then the thing about social media and the internet, or any kind of space where a lot of people can access you, it means that, let's say 100,000 people are following you. It doesn't mean that it's just 100,000 people who know who you are, because for each one person who actually follows you, there are about 3 or 4 people who are aware that you exist. They probably visit your profile, they don't follow you, but they just go away, or they see you on their explore page, or word of mouth, they've heard about you. So there's a lot more people that know about me than I'm actually aware of in terms of what the numbers are telling me. And that, for me, gives me absolute jitters. I'm constantly living my life every day, feeling like I'm less of a person and more of a concept. Because what happens is that, and I'm sure you understand what I'm saying here, is that when you are in a position of public figure status, where people come to you to receive some form of entertainment, whether they're gaining insight or they love what you create, it's still entertainment for them. It means that they conceptualize you and they rob you of the experience of being a human being. So it means that you're not allowed to be wrong. You're not allowed to suddenly change overnight. You have to constantly be giving them what they followed you for. Because remember that you're an object, you're an experience for them to enjoy. And that literally, being that person, being that human being, it's absolutely terrifying, because it means that people feel that they can just judge you. And when you're on the internet and you see those judgments, it feels like it's a full stop, a full-on confirmed idea that this is exactly what you are because what that person said, and look at all the retweets surrounding that, look at all the people agreeing. It's such a scary space to be. So I can only imagine what it's like to be a global pop star and have all these amazing things, but on the other hand, you're going to have so many people telling you that you're a terrible person, or that you deserve to die, or you might even have stalkers, or people might decide to create an idea of you that doesn't even exist. And so for me, I think I'm constantly trying to reassess and ask myself, what's my long-term vision and purpose here? What am I trying to achieve? Who do I want to ultimately reach? But most importantly, what do I want from myself? What do I want for myself? Because it's really easy to get lost in the pattern and the easy cycle of doing what works and gaining all the followers and following that process until you realize you're on 1 million and so many people love you and you're like, woo, big star. But then one day you might wake up and you're like, I don't even remember how I got here. I'm so lost. The people I started with, I can't find them. I'm surrounded by all these new people that are telling me exactly what I want to hear, but that's not what I need to hear. And that's a sad thing. And it's really important, regardless of what stage you are in your journey, to surround yourself with people who tell you that you're wrong, with people that will remind you of why you started, but ultimately people that will actually give you room to say, I feel really terrible, I think I'm scared, I'm depressed, how can I approach this? What have you done to help you? Like, you need that, and I don't think there's enough of that for people, and that's why I get so worried when people tell me they want to do things like, be famous and do all these things and, be popular, because it's nice to be liked and it feels really good to be liked, don't get me wrong, but it feels even worse to be misunderstood. like to feel like people can see you, but you're invisible at the same time. That's exactly what it feels like, because when people can see you, it means that, yeah, oh yeah, of course I know who she is, but then at the same time they can't see you because they don't understand that you're also a person, you're just as broken as them, you also want to be loved, you also want to be heard, you also want room to be given a break from being the person they want you to be, but then you're not afforded that humanity. So it's sad that you've got to literally pick between either being super successful and misunderstood, or living a life where you are living your truth, minding your business, and having access to people who actually love you and see you and hear you and want to nurture you. And it's a shame that you've got to pick between the two, but I guess that's the downside, and that's why it's so important that things like this happen, where we can talk about mental health. And I try my best to use my platform to be as honest as possible about my mental health and how things affect me. Like for the past, I'd say 12 hours, I've been receiving straight cyberbullying from men on the internet I've never met, because I posted a photo where I was wearing an outfit, like a purple jumpsuit, and it was deep plunge, and my boobs were kind of like showing in the outfit. My boobs are not perky, but I don't need to justify my boobs existing because I didn't create them. But then I've gotten so many people being like, oh my God, your tits have fallen, the walls of Jericho have come down, all these really witty but horrible jokes. And that does stuff to you as a person, because it makes you think, like, what have I done to deserve this? And then at some point, when you see a certain pattern being repeated, you start to believe it, because that's literally, essentially, that's how science works, right? That's how maths works. When it's a pattern and it's repeating itself and you can see a certain constant in it, you start to believe, okay, if this means this, then that means that, so surely the conclusion is this. And that's literally how your self-esteem gets damaged and warped. So that's why I try my best to really separate myself from who the internet tells me that I should be, and try to remember who I am, because remember that all these opinions from people are coming from people who barely know themselves as well, and they're just as scared and fragile as you, but they are not in a position where they are where you are, where they think that you can take anything. And that's why I feel so sorry for people that are in positions of, you know, global success, and they're pop stars and they're sensations, and the YouTube comments are full of horrible things. They still read those things. Of course they'll tell you, I don't read that, I'm just living my life. They're reading it. They know that you've said that, and it hurts them, and they can't do anything about that. So what they do is they just ignore it and continue living their life, and it's a cycle that never, ever, ever ends, and it just literally feels like a prison. So I guess my last question for you, Hussein, is, in all this, what is your long-term purpose here?
My long-term purpose is, and I don't know who said this line, but it's, by the way, that was an incredible monologue you just my purpose, I would say, and best form of practical advice I could give to all of you would be not to go broke trying to look rich, act your wage.
Not your age, your wage.
Yeah, act your wage. I feel like if you emulate the final result of like a rental car or like a watch or designer dress or whatever it is, and you don't actually own it, you've ruined that whole experience for yourself. The excitement, that buzz, it comes from the journey, it comes from the hustle, it comes from the grind. Like when great things happen, I think to all of us, it's not that moment when you come on stage and get your certificate. It's them hours you've been grinding in your bedroom, working, practicing, rehearsing, going through stuff, telling yourself you're good enough to do this. That moment's just a certificate. And like a lot of the time, you don't get overwhelmed by them moments because you ain't never been in that situation before. Someone's gone, oh, well done, here's your award. You're like, oh, thanks. But really, it's them nights where only you know what you've gone through to get to where you're going to. So to help like that to be achievable, I would say set goals and aims like what they would give to us in school for what success looks like to you as an individual.
And what does it look like to you?
Success to me is keeping my house a home. The family love has to be there consistently. The moment you lose that, I feel like, why are you here? If you lose the love that you have with the family that like you're with, like families get tested, man. All of your families are gonna get tested throughout life. But if you do everything for glitz and glamour and fame and don't have a home to go to, you will feel empty inside. So that, keeping food in the fridge, like making sure that my family get to eat, making sure my friends get to eat, making sure I get to buy myself things and I can afford to buy things when I want to, and just literally like being able to say I'm happy. That is what success is, because once you've done that, I promise you, if you just do you, everything else will gravitate towards you. You won't need to go and chase it and look desperate or go and like fight for something. Of course, try very hard. Like, I'm not saying just sit here and be, I'm living my best life and think Taraji's going to walk through the door, because that's not going to happen. But like, the moment people see greatness and positivity flourishing and glowing around you, it attracts you to it, and it attracts other people. Like, me and Chidera met like a year and a half ago. We was on a trip in America. We toured America, and there was like 15 people on the trip, and this was when neither of our social media was banging. Like, your Twitter was banging, but your Instagram wasn't. And we just got along really well. And it was then when we came back, things really started happening. And I was like, that's really good. I'm really happy for her. But I wasn't chilling with her because she was verified or because anything like that. It was like, we just got on. And that's the most important thing. So don't go broke trying to look rich. Act your wage.
What's your long-term purpose in the work that you're doing here?
I mean, ultimately, if we prepare, it's that preparation and learning, that joy, the struggle and learning, and it is going to be hard, and hard is good. Getting things too easy, I watch X Factor and things like that, and they'll go, oh, I've worked so hard, it's been 8 weeks now, and you think, really? The journey's it's just a wonderful journey. It's a path that wiggles, and to stay safe, to be healthy, to have food, good food, not masses of food, lots of colour food, not beige food, to be able to breathe, to remind yourself to breathe, because we don't do it nearly enough. We walk around, this is a lot of behavioural psychology, we go, and I'm ready, and you worry about everything, and you just give yourself moments of breath. When you're procrastinating, you're probably going, I don't know what to do. You're relaxing the body. Be able to relax. To have that time out to relax gives you so much power. Relaxing and breathing. And for me, it's like, if I can pass on, I think we all have to keep passing on stories to each other, And like Hussein said, there were stories that you read but you didn't identify with, because there were other people's stories. But his stories will, other people will identify more with. It's our stories and passing them on to each other as we grow older, to the younger generations. You will all know 7-year-olds and 9-year-olds, the journey starts of passing on the messages to be successful. A successful life is when you can smile and you have a good family and we connect with each other.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I've literally learned so much just sitting here listening to you. I'm just like, every single thing you said, I'm like, that makes all the sense. You're right. And Hussein, thank you for sharing your story and your insights. And I'd love to invite everyone here to please ask questions, and let's really just involve ourselves in this conversation. Hi, what's your name?
Sade.
Sade.
Yeah.
Hi, Sade.
I have 2 questions. First one's for you. We spoke about the other two and what their idea of success was, and I just want to know yours. And the second one is on the topic of mental health. Like, I find books really insightful when social media is one thing, you can find people you can relate to on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, but a book is your own personal space. And I'm reading a book at the moment called Notes on a Mel's Planet by Matt Haig, and I just wondered if you had, apart from your book, if you had any other recommendations that could really, not, I guess every book has different influence on each person, but books that have influenced you and have to as well.
Okay, so I'll answer question 1, which was, what's my idea of what success means? For me, it's just what my long-term purpose is. For me, success is feeling like, regardless of what my situation looks like, I have clarity. So I'm understanding that the situation is happening to me, but it's happening for me, and that I can take something from it that will encourage me and empower me and provide me with a tool that I can use to access the higher version of myself. And so that clarity is super important, and every single person in this room has access to that clarity if they're willing to be patient enough with their situation and understand that it's not happening to you because you're a bad person, and that you're not your pain, and that you're not your mistakes. You're in a position where you need to learn, because the only way to learn is to be wrong. And so that for me is, that success comes from the confidence in being wrong and knowing that I want to be able to say, I'm wrong, I don't understand what that means. Can you explain that? And people feel that when you reach a position of, maybe influence or a certain high part of your job where you're seen as the expert, that you have to pretend that you know, or you just secretly Google what the word means when someone says it. But sometimes that strength is in the vulnerability of saying, I don't know, can you provide me with some knowledge? Like passing that power onto someone else and trusting that regardless of how they use that power, it's not going to affect how you view yourself. But in terms of my long-term purpose, essentially it's for me to try to access as many of the hidden corners of myself as possible so that I can not only live a life that is as colourful as possible, but also for me to live as much of my truth as I can. And through me living my truth, I naturally and hopefully effortlessly want to encourage people to do the same, just existing by example. And then the last point you made about which books have worked for us, I'll answer first. The book that I've really, really clung to and adore is Neon Soul by Alex L, as in Alex E-double-L-E. And her whole mantra and message of the book is do not dim your neon soul. Every single person in this room, including the people sat on this panel, have a neon soul. So it means your soul is very bright and it can't be hidden. It's like if this room was to be, if all the lights were to be turned off and we switch on like LED lights and someone's got a glow stick, every single person can see it. In the same way, if there's a white sheet of paper and you draw a black dot on it in the corner, everyone can see the dot, like you're just drawn to the dot. And that's exactly what your soul looks like. And so the whole point of the book is to encourage you to be as much of yourself. And the way the message is delivered is through very simple prose. So it's written in a way that is easy to digest. And it recreates the experience of reading in a way where you don't feel pressure to take all the words in and understand every single thing that's said. It's just an experience that allows you to ease into who you are. And books like that are really, really important for me because I'm not an avid reader. I don't know why, I read a page, a full page with full concentration. And then after I've read that page, I can't tell you what I read. Don't know why that happens. It's terrible. I use Twitter too much. I can only take in 140 characters at a time, which is why I designed my book in that way, where it's designed for people like me who can't read. It's just straight to the message. And I think, but yeah, I think it's really important that we all just try our best. Like, this world is mad. We're existing in a capitalist society, yeah. So it means that nothing you enjoy comes without someone else being harmed. And that is so harrowing to think of. And whilst you can do your best, I think you should just endeavour to be the best possible mess you can be, because ultimately we're all going to be a mess. And so if you try to strive for perfection or to strive to avoid errors, you're going to make more errors in doing that. Have you noticed when you're too careful, that's when you make the mistake? And that's why I'm trying to learn to chill out, try to be 23, and that means not just, making fun, cute decisions and having fun and being young, but also learning that this is a time for me to be wrong so I can be right later on. Like, I'd rather be wrong now and right later than think I'm right now and then end up being wrong much later in my life when I could have just avoided those unnecessary mistakes by just addressing them earlier on in my life. Any more questions?
Well, let me just tell you about a book as well. 2 books. One, The Rainbow Fish.
Oh my gosh, yes!
Remember the story of the rainbow fish?
Yeah.
There was a fish in the sea that had all the sequins and all the other fish didn't have a sequin. And as the book goes throughout, the fish gives... I don't want to ruin the book for you.
Like, seriously, no spoilers.
The Rainbow Fish is a very good book. And second one is a poetry book by Tupac Shakur called The Rose That Grew from the Concrete. Like, people might have their opinion on him as an artist, but the book is just about him and his words. And the book is photocopies of his actual handwriting as well, so you can really get like a feel of like everything he discusses, from his internal trauma to his love problems and his family dynamics and fog life and West Coast, East Coast. It's incredible. The Rose That Grew from the Concrete.
It's going to be a kid's book again. There's a book called Life Doesn't Frighten Me at All. It's actually a poem by Maya Angelou, and it's illustrated by Basquet. And I bought it for my children when they were very little. I was like, wow, this is great. And it's good bits of advice in there just from a poem. And life isn't scary if you head it off. Take control.
Kids books are the one.
You're welcome. Any more questions? I can see you at the back. No. You, sir. Okay, you're already standing. You can go.
We'll keep
Go
our
on.
answers short.
So what tips would you give someone who procrastinates a lot? Like, say if you have something that you want to do, like music or dance or anything like that, or you might be like too fearful about the weekend, things like that. What tips would you give for procrastination?
Okay, I don't mind starting. Do you want to start?
You can start.
Okay, I'll start. I'll keep it very brief. I procrastinate a lot, and what I do is when I catch myself procrastinating, I ask myself, okay, is this going to lead me closer to the person that I aspire to become? Is this thing taking me closer to the thing that I've said I want to achieve by the end of this year? If the answer is yes, then I'm going to continue. If the answer is no, I need to get off it and at least transfer that energy to something at least similar to it that is taking me closer to who I want to be. And the second part of your question, which was about taking in people's opinions and being fearful of going for what you want to go for, are those people going to be with you when you're laid in the ground when you die? They're not. Were they there? Were they there when you came out of your mum's womb? No. Okay, so those people don't really matter that much. And that could even be the people that you love the most, even your own mother. As much as she's obviously someone that's created you, she is molding you from a perspective that she's developed from someone else who molded her. So she's only repeating a cycle. And you're in a position now where you are self-aware enough to even ask that question, which means that you're in a position to break that cycle. But you can only break that cycle by being yourself and choosing yourself and understanding that you've got something so important and unique to bring to this world that no one else can bring. And that will come from you disappointing a lot of people, including people that you love. But it won't be the kind of disappointment where you're betraying them. No, it's a disappointment that comes from choosing yourself in a world where you're taught that you're not supposed to do that. So you've got to be ready to disappoint people if you want to be successful.
Wow, you touched on some good.
Thank you.
I just want to go off 2 points that Shadira said, yeah. First one, procrastination. You have to remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. And the fact that you even think to procrastinate means that you don't want it long enough. And it ain't for you. So if you're going to procrastinate, you might as well throw your dream in the bin. Because there's no time to be procrastinating out here. Second one, going to what you said about mothers, I think that's really interesting when you say like to break the cycle and everything, because I studied for a degree in quantity surveying, and then I left. It's about buildings, it's very dry. And I graduated from it, and then I decided to write poetry, and my parents couldn't understand that. And it was very difficult for them to digest that their son is now working in Primark writing poems, because that's where I ended up. However, the one thing that stopped me from procrastinating was 10 months ago, my mum died. And I always wanted my mum to see my success. Did she get to see it? In her head, she always saw her children as successful, so that's what she got to see. Did she get to see what I wanted her to see? No. We forget that time is a very, very precious gift that is given to us, and it is the one thing that is guaranteed that will get taken away from all of us. So if you'd like to make your parents happy, your family happy, everyone around you happy, and you think you're going to make them happy by procrastinating, then that ain't going to happen, because it hit me hard. I think I didn't used to procrastinate. I was just not working. I was working hard, not working smart. I was doing the same thing, always expecting different results. But when my mum died, I was like, all right, you know what? My mum didn't get to see my success. My dad will. And I'm also now accepting that, you know what, my dad's very ill. If my dad doesn't get to see it, his grandkids will. So I'm like, I just have to keep going now, because the moment you stop and just, like, procrastination, I think, is a downhill spiral, because it leads to desire, which leads to distraction, which leads to temptation, and before you know it, you're so far from where you want to be, and it's all because you CBA, you can't be asked. So I would just say, just check yourself. You have to just check yourself and be like, all right, cool, have a day off, put it down as a day off, don't procrastinate, because time is very, very valuable. I'm sure we've all lost people in our lives, and unfortunately, we will continue to lose people, because that's just the way we're created as humans. I just got like a sympathy clap in it after.
I think, I'm a lot older than you guys, so, if I was asked in my 20s and said, yeah, I'm going to stick to my goals, yeah, they're all my goals. Well, my goals have changed. My path has changed, I had children very unexpectedly. I go, oh, look what I've got. So it was a very, I had to keep moving my path. I was running a record label when my daughter was born, and I was I'd been 22 for a week, and then my son pops out when I was 24, and that really wasn't, I know people had kids younger back in the day, but not when I was having kids. You know, people, and it's getting later and later, so you never really know what's around the corner. And it actually gave me greater drive because I wanted to provide for them and give them, you know, the things that I didn't have as a child, and probably spoilt them a little bit. And I think, right, you know, we can't do everything to please our parents because I certainly didn't. You know, you're going into the music. There's no such thing as a music business. You've got to go and get a proper job. I had that for years, you know, and we had very big hits and great success, but I still got, but when are you going to get a proper job? And you know, knowing your destiny, I would always say, you know, when you get in a taxi, if you said to a taxi driver, yeah, you arrive at the airport, take me to London, they'll go, but where? And you say, I don't know, Westminster. That's not good enough. But where? And you have to give a specific address and postcode so they know exactly where to stop and drive you. And I would say pinning a goal. When we're young, we want to be, you know, an actress, a model, a photographer, a blah, 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 whatever. Things change, you know. There's lots of people in the 30s and 40s that also wanted that. So to set your goal, where you're dropping your pin, where you live, at the end of your life, you know, and I always recommend people write their own obituaries. What would you like people to say at the end of your life? It won't ever be, you know, that I did more photo shoots or picked up more phone calls or wished you'd had more likes or more followers. It's usually things that tap back into your value system of, I was a good person, that I was a kind person, that I, you know, whatever values that you, those very big chunky words, what are those? So that can be your destination. Not to be a successful lawyer or doctor or whatever it is that you think you want to be. Just that value system. And then you'll fill in those sort of periods of your life, you know, your decades of, at the moment, this is what really interests me. This is what I feel passionate about. And you go for that. You know, that's why I think there are people that still want to go into nursing. People really do care about wanting to help other people. And we live in a world where everything's very superficial and everyone is desperate to be famous. And, you know, I've got school friends that I see on Facebook. I never post anything on Facebook. I don't even know why I've got it, but I'll see school friends showing off about how rich they are and how far at the front of the plane they've got their seat. And I find it all a bit depressing and a bit pointless, really. It's really always tapping back into what's my destination. And what did I say on that obituary that I wrote about myself? Because I can guarantee it's not going to be about having tons of money and lots of likes. It's going to be about friends and family and probably peace, actually, and calm. That's what, you know, as people get older, you desire calm. So that's my bit of advice.
Thank you. Any more questions?
No, take your time, you'll get it, it'll come back.
Yeah, no, I'll get that with you and people that talking about your body, you and the harassment you faced, and you pretending to change your beard, like how all your features that change yourself personally. How did you guys kind of like combat that and decide to continue to not let that hold you back?
You know what, yeah, I've got the best answer for you, yeah. Every morning, I bang out music that makes me feel good. And you know, my current soundtrack is from The Greatest Showman film. It's a song called This Is Me. I bang that song every morning. It's like, they don't want your broken parts. And I'm just like, I find things in society that relate to me. Like, and I just pump them back into my head. Like, even some certain Stormzy songs I've really get, and I just have to remind myself that, like, genius, was it crazy? Is genius until genius is crazy. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a. So I'm like, if I believe it, I'm right. and I'm open to feedback, but when it comes to me and about me, I find like you were saying, you find your things on Instagram and Twitter that will make you feel of value, and then just keep pumping that back into you, because this world out here will keep like monetizing off of your insecurities.
Yeah.
I think for me, what I'm learning from people picking on me is understanding that most of the time people respond to other people either out of love or fear, and fear drives a lot of decisions. And fear sometimes looks like anger. It sometimes looks like ignorance. It sometimes looks like unexplainable angst. And it's not my job to be liked by people. I try my best to be as kind as possible. I try to be as compassionate as I can, but compassion and kindness will not come at the expense of my own mental well-being. So I'm not going to dedicate my life to trying to meet other people's standards, because standards are constantly shifting as people grow and change and evolve. And when they become much more self-aware, they understand and they grow out of certain behaviors. And so I try to, I can't pander to who they are right now, because I know that they're behaving out of a place of deeper pain that maybe I remind them of, and it's their job to go and address that. But it's not my job to prove to them that I'm a better person than they think that I am, because I know myself, and I know that I try to be as loving as I can be, and I know my talents, and I know that I apply such great force to what I do, and that's what I try to prioritize. Because if I sit there trying to literally respond to every single person who makes a comment about me based on an idea they formed, which is based on their own influences and how their own mind works, I'm getting nowhere, and I'm literally betraying the wonderful person that I am, and I'm neglecting all the wonderful characteristics that I deserve to focus on. So I can't spend the limited time I have on earth, I don't even know how much time I have, negotiating with people who don't even know themselves.
I could listen to Chidera all day.
Thank you.
I've always just not really cared what anyone thought about me, and I've always used. I don't like conflict. I think conflict's really awkward. I think that's probably being English. It's that kind of, I can't say anything. So I've always used humour, and probably have headed off a lot of criticism by, I don't think I would have been called a bitch, although women who are strong tend to get those kind of labels for some bizarre reason. But I was certainly feisty, and I would use humour, and so I'd kind of take the piss out of people. If I spotted they were going to be difficult, I'd tell them a funny story about me dealing with stuff with my humour, and it's amazing how quickly they retreat and leave you alone. And I've always, I struggled to put weight on when I was young, and I'd have everyone ask me if I was anorexic constantly, and I just had a very difficult metabolism. And it could have really bothered me, but I didn't care, because I couldn't do anything about it. It was only as I got older and my metabolism changed and that's what we find. Our bodies change as we change over, and you're not waiting until you're really old. You won't believe how quickly we're all aging, and everything changes. So, it's having that connection to your humour, and you can't worry about what other people think. Everyone's got their own stuff going on, and that's cool. Just be self-assured. Just educate yourself, learn as much as you possibly can. And that doesn't mean go to university and get all these bloody certificates, because I didn't. I rebelled. I refused to go to university. But I always go to lots of talks and workshops and things like this, because I'm always learning from coming to these things when I'm speaking. And when I speak to the people in the audiences, they always bring me more info. There's a young man here that I met in Brixton who's come along today, at a very similar kind of place, and he's taught me so much as well. He's 21, and that's what I keep doing. I talk to young people like you've both taught me so much already today. That's all we can do. Just be yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much to every single person in this room. I hope you've learned something, but most importantly, I hope you have gained an insight that you will hopefully instill in someone else, and we can all just work harder to create a safer environment for everyone.